Heavy twilight was gathering in the sky above the city. A thundercloud was rising on one side of the horizon, and in the light of the setting sun, it seemed as if someone was deliberately spilling purple paint across the sky. A sharp wind was blowing gusty and prickly, like an invisible hand that was trying to tear off all its usual shell from the city. Here and there on the streets one could see flickering shop windows, but there were fewer and fewer people, so that only long shadows remained on the sidewalks. This wind was a harbinger of change. This is how Eva Morgan felt it when she left the gallery, nervously clutching her camera bag. Somewhere in her chest there was a restless thought. Everything that seems reliable and stable could collapse in 1 second. She had never liked such premonitions, but today she could not ignore the underlying excitement. Through the loosely closed gallery door came soft pop music mixed with the hum of voices. There inside, there was an exhibition that promised to become her new step in her career. However, something told me that the night would bring with it more than just creative success. Noticing that Eva lingered on the threshold, Sophia Lopez, the owner of the gallery, a woman with delicate features and the most piercing eyes imaginable, walked towards her. Sophia's ambitions were felt almost physically. It seemed that she was able to break through any wall with the power of her will. Fit, well-groomed, smiling, she knew how to win people over, although behind her smile there was always something dangerous lurking. "Eva, dear," Sophia purred, lightly touching her friend's shoulder. "Where are you going? Now the fun begins. I want to introduce you to one person." Eve turned around. Her dark hair fluttered in the wind, and her eyes reflected the glare of the street lamps. And suddenly the thought occurred to her that this evening might turn out to be fatal. But she smiled, trying to contain her inner trembling. "Sorry, I thought I'd go out and get some air. The pictures are hanging, people are looking, and I'm a little nervous." "Are you nervous?" Sophia asked with feigned sympathy, although inside she seemed to be rejoicing. "Your work is great, and this is just the beginning. You wanted to expand the boundaries, right? Don't stop at studio portraits and wedding albums. Here it is a chance to express yourself, to breathe new life into creativity." Eve closed her eyes for a moment. She felt like something was really compressing inside, as if someone was winding a spring. Sophia's words sounded encouraging, but at the same time alarm sounded. For some reason, I remembered Alex, the husband who is now most likely sitting at his laptop at home, immersed in the drawings of the next bridge. I should call. A thought flashed through her mind, but she already understood that the phone call would be interrupted in the middle or left without proper attention. As usual. "Okay, let's get acquainted," Eve conceded and took a step back into the gallery. At that very moment, a gust of wind pushed the door, hitting her on the shoulder. The pain was insignificant, but Eve shuddered from surprise, and Sophia only smiled. "Be careful," she whispered, but her eyes said otherwise, as if she wanted to say, "Come on, come in, and don't be afraid of this wind. After all, the real storms are yet to come." And she was not mistaken. As soon as Eva returned to the hall, she was enveloped in the smell of expensive perfume, mixed with the aroma of wine and light snacks. People in groups walked between photographs. Her own selection aroused both admiration and curiosity. Somewhere deep down, she felt proud that these photographs had finally seen the light of day. "Here he is," said Sophia, pointing to a man near one of the photographs. "Ryan Keller, private airline pilot. I recently met him. He is a very interesting person. It can open up new horizons for you." Ryan at that moment stood with his back to them, leaning his hand on the stand and leaning towards the girl, who was laughing enthusiastically. When he turned around, Eve felt a strange jolt in her chest. The man had an almost hypnotic charm. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and a confident smile. In his eyes there was a hidden mockery of the entire world around him, as if he had long ago realized that life was just a game and had learned to get the most out of it. "Ryan," Sophia called out to him, "please meet my close friend and wonderful photographer, Eva Morgan." He turned away from his interlocutor and slowly turned his gaze to Eve. It seemed that time inside the gallery stopped for a second, and another gust of wind rustled outside the walls. Eva didn't like being looked at so intently. But Ryan looked as if he saw right through her, and this caused both anxiety and some inexplicable interest. "I'm very glad," his voice was hoarse, velvety, containing the promise of reckless adventures. "You have amazing works, especially those where you captured the city at night. It's as if he's directly breathing through the photo." "Thank you," Eva said, feeling her heart beating faster. "I tried to show the atmosphere and life of the metropolis." Ryan nodded, looking at Eve with open curiosity. Sophia, taking advantage of the moment, took a glass of champagne and handed it to Eva. Then she took a sip of her own. It was served in such a way that it became clear. She wanted to create a situation of close communication. "Ryan is just looking for a photographer for aerial photography," Sophia said with a smile, sliding across both of their faces. "Can you imagine, he drives a private plane and offers to photograph the beauty of the coast from above. I thought about you, Eva. This is your dream, an aerial panorama." The very thought of going up on a plane and taking unique photographs fascinated Eva for many years. But life was such that she rarely had to go beyond wedding photo shoots, corporate events, and a couple of art projects. Family, child, obligations, and yet the same creative fire burned inside her, for the sake of which she once decided to become a photographer. Maybe right now fate is giving her a chance. "It's very tempting," she admitted with a timid smile. "Tempting and safe," Ryan hastened to add. "I've been flying airplanes for over 10 years. I have seen so many places that people can only dream of. I think you'll like it, and your photos will turn out simply unique." He uttered these words with such inner confidence that Eve for a moment felt the earth disappear from under her feet. The wine in the glass trembled slightly, and she drained half of it in one gulp, trying to curb the trembling inside. "You can't react like that," flashed through her head. "Because she's married, she loves Alex. There is no reason to feel so panicked by this man's mere glance." But the magnetic attraction was hard to deny. "You might think," Ryan spoke again, noticing her hesitation, "but I'm not in town for long. If you decide, let Sophia know. She will connect me with you. I will be glad to cooperate." He smiled delicately, winked, and turned back to the girl he had been talking to earlier, apparently giving Eva some personal space. Sophia, like a sly fox, glanced at her friend's embarrassed face and grinned imperceptibly. "He's okay, isn't he?" she asked in a whisper. "And this is a chance for you, Eva. You've been wanting something fresh for so long." Eva didn't answer. A double feeling grew inside her. On the one hand, she was flattered by Ryan's attention and the opportunity to photograph landscapes from above. On the other hand, something elusive told her that this could result in unexpected consequences. Or maybe this is exactly what she was looking for. Novelty, sensations, adrenaline. And all this happened against the background of the fact that for several months she could not find a common language with Alex. He seemed lost in his work, and their conversations were limited to short phrases before bed. Eve sighed and looked at the gallery doors from which she wanted to escape a moment ago. Somewhere out there, beyond the wind, her ordinary life remained. But perhaps this life needed a shake-up. "We'll see," she said quietly, and Sophia, looking pleased with the cat, led her to the rest of the guests, hiding her smile, as if she had already sensed the storm that was coming. Alex and Eva's house was located in a quiet suburb, where each plot had a neat front garden. In the evening, it became so calm there that you could hear a clock ticking somewhere or the water gurgling in the neighbor's pond. Alex, returning from work, felt only fatigue and a dull pain in the back of his head. He knew that Eva had to come late because of the exhibition, but he still felt irritated. Why is he annoyed? Most likely because he could not share her enthusiasm. He understood deep in his soul. Her art was her vital nerve, and he seemed to have lost the ability to notice this creative spark. While 6-year-old Lily slept in her room, Alex looked at the bridge plans on the kitchen table. The bright light of the lamp hit my eyes, and the silence hurt my ears. He felt that this emptiness reflected his whole life, ordered, structured, but without the colors that Eve had previously given him. They got married 8 years ago, and then it seemed that no storms could separate them. But the small cracks in the relationship, year after year, turned into ditches and now threatened to become an abyss. The gaze slid to a family photo standing in a frame by the refrigerator. In it, she and Eva are on the beach, hugging, laughing. Lily was not yet alive then. She was born a year later. Remembering those days, Alex felt a warm pang of nostalgia and pain. Once they were inseparable, they could not enjoy each other. They tried to support any dreams. And now he couldn't say what inspired Eva. It seemed that her life had become alien to him. At that moment, the door creaked quietly. Eva entered, taking off her cloak and trying not to make noise. She saw her husband and froze for a moment. Her eyes were full of contradictions, the joy of a successful exhibition interspersed with timid guilt for arriving late and bewilderment as to why he was still awake. "Hi," she said, trying to smile. "How did it go?" Alex asked, trying to be pleasant, although there was an echo of reproach in his voice. He wanted to relieve the tension, but it wasn't easy. Eva walked to the table and placed the bag with the camera next to his drawings, carefully, as if afraid to disturb the fragile balance on which they relied. "It went well. People liked my work. Sophia is delighted, already talking about new projects." She paused, watching Alex look at her hand lying on the table, but did not dare take it. "I met one person, Ryan. He is a pilot and invites me to take aerial photography. This will help me advance and attract customers. You see, I've long dreamed of something more than just a photo studio." Alex nodded absent-mindedly. Drawings and numbers were still playing in his head, but he tried to focus on his wife's words. "Pilot, it's somehow strange," flashed through his mind. He had never thought that Eve could closely intersect with people living such risky lives. However, why not? "I understand," he said, trying to find the right words. "But is it safe? You won't have insurance if something happens." Eva involuntarily smiled. It was so similar to Alex always calculate everything, always look for caution. She once liked it because she was more spontaneous herself. But now this habit of his was rather annoying. She wanted to fly, but he lowered her to the ground again and again. "I'll find out everything," she said conciliatorily. "Don't worry. If everything is in order, I will agree to the proposal. This could be an important step for me." Alex remained silent, avoiding looking into her eyes. He felt that she had already made this decision internally, and he felt burdened by the thought that her world was moving even further away from him. It was as if the blueprints for the bridge lay in front of him, but his own family bridge began to crumble, and he did not know how to strengthen it. Eva realized that she would not receive consent, at least explicitly. She just wanted Alex to hug her, ask how she was feeling, and support her. But he only moved the drawings, making room for her, and said quietly, "You should probably rest. It's already late." These words sounded colder than he intended. Regret flashed in the depths of Alex's eyes, but the moment passed. Eve nodded, feeling the bitterness and resentment rising inside her, and went into the bedroom. There, throwing her clothes on a chair, she quietly went to bed. Half an hour later, when Alex finally came into the bedroom, there was still invisible glass between them. They never touched, and the air in the room was filled with a feeling of emptiness, in which only the shadow of misunderstanding lived. A week after the exhibition, it was a clear sunny day, as if the weather itself was pushing Eva to take an adventure. She agreed with Ryan to do a small test shoot. In the morning, having told Alex that she had work on the other side of town, she deliberately kept silent about who exactly she was meeting. Her heart was beating loudly when she reached a small private airfield. Everything inside was shrinking from both fear of heights and anticipation. Ryan, as always, greeted her with the confidence of a winner. Noticing Eva from afar, he smiled and motioned for her to go to the plane. It was a small, light-colored Cessna, seemingly reliable, but still unusual for Eva, who flew only in passenger airliners. "Ready for an adventure?" Ryan asked, helping her into the cabin. His voice sounded encouraging, but in it one could feel that careless courage that gave rise to mixed feelings in Eva's soul. She nodded, settling down next to the pilot's seat, her heart pounding like crazy. I could feel the coolness of the camera under my fingers. It was through the lens that she found confidence in herself. Behind the lens, she was a creator and not a frightened wife leading a double life. "Buckle up," Ryan said and smiled as she nervously fiddled with her seat belts. Then he started the engine and the plane began to move along the runway. The noise of the engine drowned out all thoughts. When the Cessna began to pick up speed and rose above the ground, Eva felt adrenaline filling every cell of her body. She quickly switched to professional skills. She took out the camera and checked the settings. And now her lens was capturing frames that were breathtaking. The city stretched below tiny houses, thin strips of roads. Then the coast appeared with white waves on the blue surface of the sea. The sun glinted on the water, creating patterns, and Ryan changed course slightly to give her better angles. "That's it, smart girl," he shouted over the noise of the engine. "Look, there's a great coastline there. You can catch a great picture." He talked about the places he visited, what pictures could be taken and where. Eve listened to his voice, feeling the growing delight mixed with a certain dangerous closeness to this man. When the plane tilted, their shoulders slightly touched, and this tactile moment made her heart beat faster. "You can't give in to this," an inner voice told her. "You have a family." But there was something irresistibly attractive about Ryan, his confidence, the way he looked at her when she lowered the camera. It seemed that he saw not only a photographer, but also a woman who was hungry for new sensations. When they landed, Eva was burning with adrenaline. She wanted to leave immediately in order to put out this internal fire, but Ryan offered her coffee in a small bar on the airfield. He said they could discuss the footage. Eva agreed. She understood that she had to leave, but some part of her wanted to extend their time together. The bar was crowded and noisy. Mechanics, pilots, and flight attendants from neighboring hangars were milling around. Ryan took a cappuccino for her and black coffee without sugar for himself. They sat in the corner, and while Ryan looked at her pictures on the camera display, Eva could not take her eyes off his hands. Strong, long fingers, tan skin. Dangerous beauty, addictive like a quagmire. "You have amazing talent," he finally remarked, looking up from the display. "These personnel are not inferior in quality to the work of world agencies. Look what the sky is like and how you caught the sea." "Thank you," she said, smiling shyly. "I think if we continue, there will be a whole series. Landscapes, the city, takeoffs, and landings. I can take you on a few flights when I have time." Eve felt a warm wave of gratitude and dangerous interest. She understood that by agreeing, she risked going too far. But this is her work, her creative realization. This is not treason or anything like that. Just cooperation. That's what she told herself. "That would be great," she said, feeling the words leaving her lips. And when she caught his gaze, in which a predatory flame flickered, something trembled inside. But she quickly averted her eyes to the side, pretending to admire the photographs on the camera. They stayed in the bar for about an hour, discussing plans and details. During this time, it seemed that an elusive understanding had developed between them, dangerously close to developing into something more. When Eve finally left, her steps were almost flying. However, the fire in her soul did not go out, but only a spark flared up, promising her something unexpected and forbidden. On the way home, she painfully tried to convince herself that all this was just work. But is it worth deceiving yourself? That evening, when Eva returned home, Alex was already waiting for her at the kitchen table with a serious expression on his face. There was tension in the air, like a dark cloud about to burst into a thunderstorm. Lily, put to bed, was the only joyful detail in this house, and behind her door was the silence of adult problems. "How were the work things?" Alex asked, and there was steel in his voice. Eva put her bag on the floor. She was uneasy in her soul because she felt that something in her behavior aroused his suspicions. Maybe because of her frequent absences, maybe because of the lack of warmth in her voice. Or maybe he noticed that she had been looking through him lately, increasingly withdrawing into herself. "It's normal," Eva answered, trying to remain confident. "I had a small photo project, so I had to go out of town." She looked into his eyes, trying to see if he understood that this was not the whole truth. Alex pursed his lips. He was not a man capable of emotional tantrums, but his silent tension was sometimes worse than any screams. He looked straight at her, and there was a feeling that he was evaluating her every word, every look. Eve felt a pang of conscience. "Eva," he began, touching the edge of the table, as if looking for support, "we stopped talking completely. I sense that you are moving away, and I don't want to start an interrogation right now, but are you sure everything is okay?" She hesitated for a moment. Should he talk about Ryan and her taking off for filming? After all, this is part of her job. But deep down, something objected. She herself was not sure that she could call this a purely working interaction. Everything was mixed up. "Yes, I'm fine," came her answer, and she herself felt bitter about this lie. Alex noticeably tensed. Maybe he was expecting frankness, but he came across another wall. He ran his hand through his hair wearily. "Okay, I believe that you will figure it out on your own. The main thing is, don't get carried away. I want there to be no secrets between us," he added with emphasis on the last phrase. Eva didn't know what to say. A feeling of guilt brought a lump to her throat, but pride and some kind of resentment could not understand what exactly was preventing her from opening up. She saw that Alex was sincerely trying to extend his hand to her, but for some reason she could not take it. "Sorry, I need to take a shower and get some sleep," she finally said, and, without waiting for an answer, walked down the corridor. Alex remained sitting at the table, looking at the cooling tea. He felt helpless, as if he was slowly but surely being pushed away from the family in which he had once been a supporter. Several weeks passed on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Eva continued to meet with Ryan for joint flights and photo shoots, while actively avoiding detailed conversations with Alex. She told herself that nothing like that was happening. Just work, just new inspiration. But there was tension in the air, and at night she was haunted by disturbing dreams, as if her conscience warned, "Stop." At some point, Eva made a mistake. She forgot to take the plane ticket out of her pocket and put her jacket in the closet in front of Alex. He was already on his guard. That evening, when Eva returned from another photo shoot, Alex stood in the living room, holding that same ticket in his hands. His face expressed an explosive mixture of pain, fear, and anger. "What is this?" he asked coldly when she entered. It was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured onto Eve. "My throat is dry." She saw familiar flight numbers, date, time, and most importantly, there was Ryan's name, next to which was her own name. She didn't have the courage to lie right away. The brain feverishly tried to come up with an excuse, but something inside had already collapsed. "Alex," she whispered, but he interrupted. "I found photos on your phone." He waved his hands. One of them contained a smartphone. "What are these pictures of you and this?" "Pilot, and don't tell me these are just business shots. I'm not blind." The silence was cut by the awkward sound of dripping water from the kitchen faucet. Eva stood with her eyes downcast. Her heart was pounding, as if a caught bird was beating in a cage. She tried to explain to herself that everything is not as it seems. But is it really wrong? After all, in those photos, she and Ryan were too close. In one of them, Ryan had his arm around her shoulders. In the other, she was laughing in his arms. At the time, it seemed like an innocent impulse, almost friendly. But now, under the heavy gaze of her husband, it looked like an obvious betrayal. She understood that there were frames, and frankly, because she could not resist and succumb to temptation. It was an accident, she tried to choke out. "I got carried away, I don't know. But that doesn't mean anything. There is no love, this is." "Means? Doesn't that mean?" Alex hit the table with his fist so hard that the dishes shook. He almost never raised his voice, but now he was literally cracking. "Then why did you need to lie to me? Why not tell the truth?" "I was afraid." Eve stopped short, realizing that no matter how much she made excuses, it still sounded terrible. A feeling of guilt welled up inside her. "Sorry, it was a mistake. This was one time. I don't know how it happened." Alex closed his eyes, as if he didn't believe in the reality of what was happening. Then he ran his hand over his face, trying to pull himself together. There was resentment and a desire to understand in his eyes. Once, he whispered this through his teeth. "Is this even true?" Eve nodded nervously. She already felt that repentance would change little. Yes, physical intimacy with Ryan happened once, one evening after the flight, when they found themselves together at dinner, and passion clouded her mind. But the emotional contact continued, and she couldn't turn away from these feelings in time. "Go away," Alex said shortly. "Clear your head. You can live with your friend Sophia or somewhere else. Doesn't matter, but I can't see you." Panic was reflected in Eva's eyes. She had never seen her husband in such a state, usually cold, but now there was ashes inside. Tears came to my throat. "Alex, wait." She took a step towards him, hoping that there was at least a chance. But his face fell, and he pulled away. "Go away before I do anything worse," he repeated, more tiredly. "I can't look at you now." Whether she slammed the door behind her or whether this sound was heard in her mind, she did not understand. When Eva ran out of the house, she was filled with fear. This is how a family can collapse in one moment, and that ominous wind was not only Ryan, but the misunderstanding itself, which had been accumulating for years. However, which of the two of them buried their marriage today? The answer seemed obvious. The night painted the city in gray tones, and Eve's soul seemed to scream silently. The only person she could go to now, Alex was right, was Sophia. When Eva knocked on the door of her apartment, she opened almost immediately, as if she was expecting this guest. Sophia lived in a fashionable area, in a spacious apartment overlooking the river. The interior resembled a modern gallery. Minimalist forms, cold metal, marble, stylish paintings on the walls, reflecting her taste for abstraction and provocation. And all this seemed to emphasize, here lives an ambitious person, accustomed to the fact that desires must be fulfilled immediately. "I knew it," said Sophia, peering into Eva's tear-stained face. "Come in." Eva entered, and as soon as the door slammed shut, a sob escaped her. She tried to say something, but couldn't. Sophia, contrary to expectations, did not rush to hug her, but only motioned to go into the living room. She was a woman who knew how to manipulate people and situations, but she had a special relationship with Eve. Perhaps a mixture of friendship and quiet envy, or something more complex. "Yes, yes." "Finally, what I expected happened," said Sophia, sinking onto the sofa. "Alex threw you out of the house, or did you leave on your own?" "He drove me away," Eva admitted, feeling a wave of fear and pain overwhelm her. "Because of Ryan, he found out about our—" The words got stuck in my throat, but Sophia was already smiling. "So what? Is this the end of the world? You are a free person, Eva. It's a pity, of course, that Alex found out." She stood up and headed to the kitchen table to pour 2 glasses of wine. "But maybe it's for the best. After all, he did not appreciate your talents, did not develop your dreams. At least Ryan gave you what you've been craving for a long time, right?" There were dangerous notes in Sophia's voice. Eva could not understand whether her friend really supported her or, on the contrary, enjoyed her misfortune. But there was nowhere to go. She needed at least some kind of shelter. When the glass of wine was in Eva's hand, she took a sip, and the bitterness on her tongue mixed with the bitterness inside. "I don't know what to do," she said, trying not to cry again. "I don't want to lose my family. But Alex, I don't understand him anymore, and he doesn't understand me. You have a choice. Either continue to reproach yourself and try to return the person who could not accept you with all your passions, or—" Sophia paused and tilted her head, looking at Eva like a hunter at the victim. "Try to live for yourself, without regard to other people's moral teachings." These words sent a shiver through Eve. She once considered Sophia an example of a free spirit, capable of breaking rules and moving forward. But now I realized that everything was much more complicated. Does she really need to live for herself at the cost of destroying her family? Should we seek solace in delusions about Ryan? What about their daughter? Lord, what have I done? "I will stay with you for a while," Eva asked quietly, interrupting the painful stream of thoughts. "Of course," Sophia grinned. "Take the guest room. However, you can consider it yours. We'll work it out, don't worry. After all, life does not end, but only begins." But these words sounded ominous in Eve's ears. She already felt a circle closing around her, in which Sophia could influence her every step. And outside this circle remained Alex and her daughter Lily, her real support, which she has now lost due to her own temporary inability. The days dragged on. Eva has been living with Sophia for a week. Their coexistence looked like this. Sophia often disappeared into her gallery, preparing new exhibitions, and Eva wandered aimlessly around the apartment, looking at other people's household items, trying to find her corner, her warmth in them. But this apartment was alien, cold, and reflected only the ambitions of the owner. Eva tried to contact Alex, but he did not answer his calls. She wrote messages, asked about Lily. The answers came short and distant. Everything is fine. Lily is fine. He did not directly prohibit meetings with his daughter, but stated that now he doesn't want additional worries for the child until Eva understands herself. And she understood. He was simply afraid that her presence would only reopen the wounds. Living with a constant feeling of guilt and melancholy was difficult. Sometimes Eve would wake up from nightmares. She would see the bridge Alex was working on collapsing and burying everyone she loved. In these dreams, Lily cried, calling her mother, but she could not help. She stood as if chained to the place. To distract herself, Eva immersed herself in processing the footage taken during the flights with Ryan. She tried to send them to magazines, competitions, and published them on social networks. Did she need to justify herself by saying that at least something from this frightening connection would be useful? Probably yes. Sophia, seeing that Eva was immersed in her sadness, gave her twofold advice. Give up thoughts about fidelity, about family ties. Men themselves just want to benefit from a woman. Your only mistake is that you didn't break out of the cage in time. Eva didn't know how to answer. She still loved Alex deep down, but she wasn't sure she deserved his forgiveness. At such moments, she remembered how he held her hand at the birth of Lily, how they spent hours discussing the future of the child, how they planned their life. And all this was shattered due to a rush of passion caused by the feeling that her soul was suffocating. She asked herself again and again, is it really impossible to find another way out? Is this just ordinary depression? As if subconsciously seeking punishment, Eve stopped communicating with Ryan. She was sad to think that she had become just another victory for him. But Sophia received conflicting information, as if Ryan was asking how she was, if she wanted to continue the joint project. Eve's heart sank. Even if it was self-deception, she wanted to think that he had disappeared from her life for a reason. However, not a single call came from Ryan, only messages from Sophia. He is interested in you. Why are you silent? But she was in no hurry to answer. Deep down, Eve felt that everything was going wrong, and it was scary to realize that she pushed herself down this path. A few days after breaking up with Alex, Eve learned from the news that Ryan had serious problems with his license. Sophia, returning in the evening, told the details. Just imagine, he came under investigation. They say that during one of the flights he violated flight rules, and a malfunction was discovered on the plane. Perhaps he forged some inspection papers. Now his license has been temporarily suspended, and if they prove negligence, they may even take it away. The words hit Eve so hard that anxiety flared up in her soul. Regardless, Ryan played an important role in her life, and even though she blamed him and herself for everything that happened, she didn't want him to fall to the bottom. She imagined him so confident and carefree, and she couldn't believe that he could deliberately commit a violation. But who knows what goes on in the head of a person who is used to living on adrenaline? He said something about an engine failure. Eve muttered, remembering their last flight. Did he really take a risk? These are just flowers, said Sophia, raising an eyebrow. He is known for the fact that he likes to tickle his nerves. And now that he has problems, he is not allowed to take the helm. His whole career is going to hell. Something in Sophia's voice sounded malicious. Eve caught this and felt a painful tightening in her chest. Is this why she traded her family? A man who may have just lived for the thrill without thinking about the consequences? In the depths of her soul, Eva felt sympathy. She remembered how Ryan talked about his travels, how passionately he talked about the freedom that flying gives. and now he is locked on the ground. A couple of days passed, and suddenly Eva's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Ryan. My heart skipped a beat. With a pain in her mouth, as if biting her tongue, Eva answered. Hello? Hi, Ryan's voice sounded hoarse and tired. It's as if in front of her now is not that dashing pilot, but a man who is shackled by anxiety. Sorry for not getting in touch. There were problems, and even now they haven't gone away. Eve closed her eyes, feeling regret, guilt, and the memory of that short burst of passion mixed in her. She understood that their conversation would not be healing for both. I know, I heard it from Sophia. I'm sorry. Eva didn't know how to find the words. I'm sorry that this happened. He paused. There was a heavy exhalation on the other end of the line. It's my own fault. I thought that everyone around me was a fool, and I was the only lucky one. A bitter note of self-flagellation slipped into his voice. I was suspended from flying for an indefinite period, maybe forever. To be honest, I don't know what to do with myself now. Eve's heart sank. She remembered her inner fire when she rose into the sky next to him, and now she imagined what it would be like to lose the purpose of her whole life. Ryan, she began, but couldn't continue. What could she offer him? Eve herself did not know how to get out of her own abyss. Don't say anything, he interrupted. I know it's not easy for you now either. You left your husband, right? Or did he kick you out? Rather, he kicked me out. Eva smiled bitterly. Sorry, Ryan said, and there was quiet resignation in his voice. I didn't want to destroy your family. Things just got out of control. Sorry. Eva felt a heaviness in her soul. She understood that their conversation would not bring anything back and would not change reality. But there was no longer any insolence in Ryan's tone, just devastation. Everything he strived for went to hell, and she could only listen to him slowly drown. Maybe we should wait a little until everything settles down, she suggested timidly. Yes, indeed. I just wanted to say, Ryan hesitated, if you need anything, well, you can call. Although I'm unlikely to be useful to anyone right now. There was silence again. Eve wanted to say that she held no grudges, that perhaps all was not lost, that he too might have a chance to return to the sky. But the words stuck in her throat. Finally, she said quietly, Thank you for calling. He replied, Take care of yourself, and hung up. Eve sat looking at the dim screen. Strangely, she felt neither joy nor relief, only the throbbing pain of emptiness. It was as if all their lives were now shrouded in thick twilight, and not a ray of hope was visible. Every day, Eva understood more and more deeply that a rash act had destroyed everything that was dear to her. Her home, her relationship with her husband, the stability of her daughter. Now she felt like a guest in Sophia's life and not a full-fledged person. One evening, when Sophia brought home a bottle of sparkling wine and suggested they have fun, Eva realized that she could no longer remain in the role of a weak-willed doll. She gave up alcohol, sat quietly on the sofa, and said, Sophia, I have to decide something about my life. I can't sit here doing nothing all the time. I need to at least see Lily, talk to Alex. Sophia's eyes narrowed in displeasure. And what will you tell him? What do you miss? He's unlikely to forgive you. You betrayed his trust. Eve winced in pain, but did not look away. I have to try. Sophia, you don't understand. Or don't want to understand how I suffer without my daughter. Sophia sighed and poured herself a glass of wine. You know, you were a wonderful wife and mother once upon a time. But you yourself said that you were suffocating in the routine. Remember how you cried at night, complaining that Alex didn't notice you, didn't support you. Do you want to go back to the same prison? No, Eve squeezed out. But I don't think divorce is the only solution. We were a family. Maybe there is a chance to fix something. She said this not for Sophia, but for herself. She had to make sure it wasn't over. I remembered that Alex had never been a cruel person. He is too honest and responsible to simply abandon her and his daughter if he feels sincere repentance. And she really repented. All those unjustified expectations, unsatisfied creative ambitions, thirst for novelty, all this could have been resolved differently. but she couldn't turn back time. "Do what you want," Sophia finally said. "But know this, if he pushes you away, you can come back to me at any time." Eve felt that there was something ambiguous in her friend's words again. But that didn't matter now. She needed to see her daughter. Should have tried to talk to Alex. The next day, Eva gathered her courage and came to Alex's house. Once this house was hers, but now she did not dare to enter without an invitation. She dialed Alex's number several times, but he didn't pick up. In the end, she made up her mind and rang the doorbell. Her heart was beating so loudly that it seemed like the neighbors could hear it. Several seconds dragged on endlessly, and then the door opened slightly. Alex stood in front of her. He looked exhausted, with shadows under his eyes. But the first thing Eva felt was how much she missed him, how familiar these facial features were to her. He was silent, and she didn't know what to say. Everything inside was breaking. Finally, she whispered, "I need to see Lily, please." Alex rested his hand on the doorframe. It was clear from his gaze that he was still offended, wounded, and wary. But somewhere deep inside, a warm feeling flashed. He nodded. "Lily is at home. She will be happy to see you. But remember, I don't want you to give her false hope. If you came only to disappear again." "No," Eva interrupted, and there was a sincere plea in her voice. I missed you. I will not talk about us. I will not argue or reproach. Let me just hug my daughter." Alex looked at her for a minute, as if deciding whether to give her a chance. Finally, he opened the door a little wider. "Okay, come on in." Eva walked into the living room and immediately felt a surge of memories. Here was her favorite chair, and on the table there was still a vase of dried flowers that they bought together. The house remained the same, but the atmosphere became somehow tense, as if the walls were holding the owner's grudge. Lily ran out of the room, her brown hair tied up in two ponytails. Seeing her mother, she froze for a moment and then rushed into her arms. "Mother, where have you been?" Eva hugged her daughter, trying not to burst into tears of happiness and guilt. She took her in her arms, although the girl had already grown up. Feeling her smell, the warmth of her little body, Eva realized that she was ready to go through any tests just to get her family back. "I'm sorry, my bunny," she whispered, pressing her daughter's hair. "I was busy and—" Her voice trembled, and she swallowed convulsively. "I missed you." Lily hugged her even tighter. The small heart beat with a rapid rhythm, and a wave of tenderness washed over Eva. She stole a glance at Alex, who stood in the doorway with a stern expression on his face. There was a lot of pain in those few seconds. He, of course, understood that Eva was Lily's mother and could not forbid them to communicate, but it was not easy to get rid of the resentment and anger. "Mom, will you live with us now?" Lily asked, looking at Eve with big eyes in which hope shone. Eva didn't know what to answer. She squeezed the girl's hands and said quietly, "Not yet, Lily. I still have a lot to do, but I will come more often, okay? And we will definitely see each other." The daughter frowned, pouting her lips slightly, and pressed herself close to her mother. Eve glanced at Alex again out of the corner of her eye. He silently watched the scene. Perhaps he wanted to say, "No, she won't stay. She has important things to do." But he remained silent for the sake of his daughter. Time passed painfully slowly. Eva talked to Lily for several minutes about school, about friends, about how she plays in the garden. The girl showed her new drawings. In all the drawings they were together, Dad, Mom, and Lily, smiling happily. This made Eva's insides clench, as if a stone slab was being laid on her heart. Finally, Eva could not stand it and quietly asked Alex, "Can I come again one of these days? Or, maybe we can talk?" Alex pursed his lips, tension flashing across his face. He nodded. "Come if you want to see Lily. But as for the conversation, I'm not ready yet. Maybe later." Eva nodded silently, hardly swallowing the tears that were rising in her throat. Then she kissed her daughter on the top of her head and walked towards the exit. When the door closed behind her, she felt her legs give way. The feeling of loss covered her with renewed vigor. She touched what had once been her life, and now she understood how painful it was to feel like a stranger in her own home. But at the same time, a tiny seed of hope arose in my soul. Lily still loves her. Alex didn't kick her out. He allowed her to meet her daughter. Maybe this is the first step to trying to get my family back. Eve knew that the path would be difficult, but she was ready to fight for the most precious thing in her life, for that warm connection that once connected their hearts. The sunset turned purple on the horizon, turning the thick concrete structures the color of spilled blood. The construction site of the bridge Alex was working on hugged, the river like the giant ribs of a prehistoric beast. The rumble of equipment, the squeal of metal, the smell of damp concrete and grease hung in the air, saturated with a heavy foreboding. Alex walked along the fence with a project plan in his hands, a careful look, notes in the margins. For 3 months now he had been working here almost without rest, leaving all his personal worries behind the gate. At night he dreamed of how he himself became one of the supporting pillars of the bridge, freezing in concrete, but he woke up with the desire to continue, as if work was now the only salvation from the emptiness that the break with Eve had left. Walking next to Alex was Matt Rivera, his colleague, a man with a strong jaw as if carved from stone, who had served in the army in the past and had suffered many dark chapters in life. Matt rarely smiled, and if he did, it was only when communicating with those whom he considered his own. Lately, Alex had noticed that Matt's eyes were becoming slightly clouded more and more often, as if he was trying to soothe his internal wounds with booze. But Alex, exhausted by his own problems, tried not to get into his colleague's soul. He understood, everyone has their own demons. "We'll check the fasteners at the 5th section," Alex said, pointing to the drawings. "If everything agrees with the calculations, you can prepare to pour concrete." Matt nodded silently. He felt awkward at that moment as a metal flask with the remains of whiskey clanked in the pocket of his jacket. He knew that on any other day Alex would have noticed his condition, but now Alex was absorbed in the schemes, alienated from everything that did not concern the bridge. Matt himself felt the internal tension tearing at him from the inside. Divorce and war memories, everything got mixed up, depriving him of peace. Alcohol became a substitute for sleep for him, but he tried to hold on at work. Today, something didn't go according to plan. From the very morning, Matt could not concentrate. He spent a sleepless night, and at dawn he drank too much alcohol, hoping that it would give him vigor. But instead of cheerfulness, there came a barely noticeable trembling, and the thought that he might let his colleagues down squeezed his heart tightly. And yet he drowned out this thought with a sip from his flask, believing that he'll somehow make it through one more shift. Around lunchtime, Alex noticed that a tractor loaded with metal beams had driven too close to the edge of the ditch, exactly where temporary supports for the future span stood. He waved his hand, trying to get the driver's attention. But the tractor began to hum, and Matt volunteered to drive it, deciding to save time. Alex didn't pay any attention to this. Matt was pretty good with technology, after all. The tractor bucket was scooping up heavy beams, and one of them swayed dangerously when Matt pulled the lever too hard. Alex screamed and motioned for accuracy. All this happened under the metallic clang and roar of the engine, and the sun was setting, painting the construction site with ominous red-orange reflections. Suddenly, there was a crash. The huge beam slipped from its mountings, hit the edge of the trench, and shook the temporary supports that supported the freshly poured concrete platform. Alex felt the ground tremble under his feet, and a cascade of stones and debris rushing towards them from above. "Matt!" Alex shouted, and he apparently lost control. His eyes were running, his hands were twitching, and at that moment the tractor ran over a piece of reinforcement, which led to an even greater roll of the machine. Having caught on the edge of the embankment, the tractor swayed sharply and began to fall on its side, threatening to fall along with the driver to the bottom of a deep hole. Alex didn't remember how he rushed forward. His entire essence, from the painful memory of Eve's betrayal and his own sense of guilt in front of her, to the confidence that he cannot allow the death of his colleague, merged into a single impulse. The construction site seemed to come to life, began to grind, people rushed about in panic. Someone shouted into the radio, calling an ambulance and rescuers. dust, and dirt flew into the air. The gathering dusk made everything that happened look like a nightmare. But Alex did not allow himself to give in to fear. He rushed to the tractor, trying to bring Matt to his senses by screaming. You could already hear the chilling, ragged breathing of your colleague, who realized that he was locked in uncontrollable metal. Damn, open the door, jump out. Alex strained, leaning towards the cabin. Matt beat his hand on the lock, but could not really turn it. His fingers were cramped, and his brain was clouded with alcohol and adrenaline. Below, in one wrong move, the ground could collapse, dragging all the equipment with it. Alex saw a gap between the tractor cabin and the wall of the trench. Without hesitation, he put his hand inside, trying to open the jammed door. The beam lying on top was grinding, ready to slide at any second and hit the glass. "Damn it, come on," Alex yelled, leaning his whole body. Jerk. The grinding of metal on stone, a crack, as if a giant beast had crunched a bone. The door gave way slightly, and Matt managed to fall out. He fell to the hard ground, skinning his knee, but was alive. Alex grabbed his arm. "Get up, let's go," he shouted. They rushed away from the settling supports. At that same second, the tractor overbalanced with a roar and fell down. Debris fell. A spreading circle of dust covered them in a wave, and Alex felt a deafening blow to his leg. Trying to keep Matt on his feet, he realized too late that a piece of rebar had pierced him. "Damn it, Alex," Matt groaned, trying to break free and support his friend. Sparks of panic and remorse danced in his eyes. Alex felt each heartbeat respond with sharp pain. He clenched his teeth, trying not to scream, and exhaled. "The main thing is that you're okay. Let's go, damn it." His feet seemed to be sinking into a viscous quagmire. But they still got out to a safer place, where the workers, scared and confused, had already fled. Alex, wincing in pain, tried to determine whether he was badly injured. Just a couple of minutes ago, he was safe and sound, and now his leg is numb. It seemed to him that he no longer felt her either from shock or horror. People ran up with stretchers. Matt, shaking all over, tried to say that it was his fault, that he had lost control. Alex only wheezed in response, sagging. The world around me began to float. A veil covered my eyes. Through the roar and screams, he only heard, "Call an ambulance, urgently." "Everything will be fine, Guy, hold on," someone muttered. Alex, in his last glimmer of consciousness, thought that he should call Eve and tell her to take care of Lily if things suddenly got worse. Then the darkness began to roll in, carrying him into a deep void. Her image flashed in her mind, Eva, with radiant eyes, when she was happy next to him, and everything in their life had not yet had time to become covered with cracks. His hands unclenched, and he fell into unconsciousness, to the alarming screams of sirens that echoed in the concrete labyrinth of the construction site, like a distant harbinger of big changes. Evening twilight thickened over the hospital building, a dull monolith among the dirty city streets. Eve leaned against the sterile wall of the corridor, peering into the closed doors of the operating room. Her hands were shaking, her mouth was dry. She rushed here as soon as Sophia told her, "Alex had an accident. He's in the hospital." Sophia learned about this from a mutual friend who worked in the city administration. Eve's heart sank with fear and guilt. As she rushed into the taxi, mentally going through all the scenarios that could happen, it became completely clear to her. Despite everything that had happened, despite the betrayal and bitter reproaches, she could not stay away if Alex was between life and death. She remembered what happened a few years ago, when Alex cut his hand on a piece of construction reinforcement. Then he almost got blood poisoning, and she sat by his bed for almost 2 days, praying that he would recover. This fear of loss still gripped her like icy fingers squeezing her heart. Finally, the doors to the operating room opened slightly, and a doctor wearing a mask and a sterile gown came out into the corridor. Eva rushed towards him, her eyes asking about the most important thing. "Are you a relative?" the doctor asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm his wife," Eva exhaled hoarsely, feeling something swell inside from the realization that legally she was really still his wife. The doctor nodded, removing his mask. Your husband was admitted with a hip injury, quite serious damage to the knee ligaments. We managed to carry out the operation, but long-term rehabilitation will be required. I'm afraid he will have to temporarily forget about the construction site. If all goes well, he will be able to walk, although some side effects may remain. Eve breathed a sigh of relief. When can I see him? She asked almost pleadingly. Now he will be transferred to the ward, but he will most likely recover from the anesthesia. I don't think he'll be able to communicate, but you can sit next to me. The doctor looked at her pale face and, softening, added, I think it will be important for your husband to see his own face now. Eva barely held back tears of gratitude. She wanted to immediately run to the ward, but the doctor asked her to wait in the corridor until the orderlies transported Alex on a gurney. The seconds lasted like hours. There seemed to be a dark energy of fear and doubt in the air. The thought was spinning in my head. What if he's angry with me and doesn't want to see me? Maybe I'll just disturb his peace. But at the same time, she unbearably wanted to make sure that he was really alive, even if he was wounded. A quarter of an hour later, the doors swung open and a gurney with Alex, who seemed to be sleeping deeply, rolled out of the operating room. His face was paler than usual, and his lips were slightly cracked. Strands of hair stuck to my forehead. He seemed so vulnerable, like a child in the hands of a harsh fate. Eve stepped forward, afraid to breathe loudly. You can follow us into the room, said one of the nurses. She followed, trying not to interfere with them driving the gurney along the narrow corridor. Slow steps echoed with the click of heels in the endless labyrinth of hospital walls. Tears welled up in her eyes, but Eva held back with an effort of will because she had to maintain at least the appearance of calm. In the ward, when Alex was transferred to the bed, Eve was allowed to come closer. The doctor pointed to the call buttons and said that if anything changes in his condition, he needs to immediately inform the staff. She nodded automatically, unable to take her eyes off her husband's face. He will begin to come to his senses in a couple of hours, the doctor added. For now, it's better that no one bothers him. But your presence is not prohibited. When the door closed behind the doctor, Eva sat down on a chair at the head of the bed. The room was illuminated by a dim lamp, revealing from the shadows only the outlines of bandages on Alex's leg and his arm, to which the Roman 4 was attached. Under the white sheet there was a wound, barely kept from bleeding. Forgive me, Eva whispered. The words that she didn't have time to say before sounded in her head. I'm sorry for not being there for you when you needed me. I'm sorry I betrayed your trust. She remembered how they had once had a conversation about courage and how real courage was being loyal to those close to you. She thought she understood everything at the time, but years later she realized how fragile the human heart can be. About an hour passed before Alex stirred, raised his hand, and winced painfully. Eva leaned towards him. Alex, it's me. Everything is fine. You're in the hospital. His eyes slowly opened, as if with a creak. He focused his gaze on her face. First, misunderstanding, confusion, and then something else, a mixture of surprise and disbelief. Eva, he said hoarsely, as if he himself did not believe that she was here. Yes, yes, I came as soon as I found out. She didn't know if she could take his hand, but still hesitantly touched his palm. He did not withdraw his hand, but did not return the gesture with warmth. He just frowned, wincing sharply in pain. Leg, damn. He breathed, closing his eyes from another wave of unpleasant sensations. You had surgery, she said quietly. The doctors say you'll get better, but it takes time. Alex was silent. He pursed his lips as if he lacked words. Then he opened his eyes and glared at Eve. Why are you here? He asked finally, and his voice sounded almost emotionless. I thought... He didn't finish, but she understood everything without words. I thought we were already strangers. They called me. I found out about the accident. I couldn't remain indifferent. Alex, The words are confusing. Eve felt tears welling up. We are not strangers to each other. We have Lily. We have a lot of things. She stopped because she knew. She had no right to cry now and destroy his inner world with her emotions. He must recover. And yet the feelings were rushing out. Alex sighed quietly, turning his gaze to the Roman four, then to the window, where the darkness thickened, as if he was looking at them from the side. I don't know what to do now, he said slowly. My project. Also this damn leg. Lily. I wanted everything to be different. Eve realized that this was not only about his trauma, but about his life in general. She took his hand more tightly, feeling how cold his fingers were. I'll help you if you let me, she said, feeling her heart skip a beat. I don't care now about the work that I did, those flights. It was all a mistake. The only thing I understood is that life without a family has no taste. Alex was silent for some more time, and the silence became almost tangible, heavy, like lead clouds before a thunderstorm. Then he stared at the ceiling. I need to think. I'm tired. He closed his eyes, as if falling into a painful slumber. Eva did not bother him. Even this short conversation was enough to understand that he did not drive her away immediately. And maybe this is already a step forward after months of silence and mutual bitterness. She sat by the bed for about half an hour until she realized that Alex had fallen asleep. Hospital noises, the sound of Ives, and the muffled voices of the staff all merged into one continuous hum. Eve stroked his hand for the last time and quietly left the room. Outside the door, leaning against the wall, she gave vent to tears. The following days in the hospital passed monotonously and tensely. Alex recovered from the operation more slowly than he would have liked. The pain in his leg made itself felt every morning. The medications caused weakness and drowsiness. The doctors said that if the stitches healed well and there were no complications, he would be discharged in a couple of weeks. But then he would have a long rehabilitation period with crutches or a special orthosis. Eva came to the hospital every day, bringing homemade broth and clean linen. At first, Alex accepted this concern warily, as if not knowing how to react. He could not understand whether this was another crazy idea of hers to fulfill her marital duty and disappear. But gradually he got used to her presence, just as one gets used to a dim night light in a room, which prevents complete darkness from consuming us. Thank you, he said one day when Eva was carefully adjusting the pillow under his head. Previously, he spoke to her briefly, to the point, but this time there was something special in his voice, as if a remnant of former tenderness. Eva smiled and sat down on the stool next to him, trying not to look him straight in the eyes. She was afraid that she would see the resentment still hidden there. I wanted to do something useful, she said. I can't sit with my hands folded. They fell silent, and Alex looked away to the window. A rainy sky, gray and low, hung over the hospital courtyard. It seemed that the whole world had shrunk to these four walls, the drip and the sound of raindrops on the windowsill. Doctors came in regularly, checked things, gave medications, but most of the time Alex was in half-thoughtful silence. However, no matter how hard he tried to hide it, he saw that Eve was truly repentant. He felt unostentatious care in her movements and words, and this evoked in him a complex mixture of emotions, resentment, pain, but also warm gratitude. Yes, she cheated, inflicted a wound that will hardly heal without a scar. But the more they talked in the hospital room, the more clearly Alex realized that his feelings for her had not died. They, like the fragments of a destroyed bridge, could still be restored if not in their previous form, but at least in such a way as to be connected again. One evening Matt came to see Alex. He looked even more emaciated than usual, bruises under his eyes, an unshaven cheek. At that moment, Eva was about to go out into the corridor to give her colleagues the opportunity to talk in private, but Alex motioned for her to stay. How are you? Matt asked with a hoarseness in his voice, looking down at the cast and bandages. It's been better, Alex smiled bitterly, placing his palm on his bandaged thigh. But you're lucky that we're both alive at all. Matt moved his shoulders nervously. His eyes, reddened, betrayed nights without sleep. Alex, I wanted to say that it's all my fault. I ruined the operation, brought the tractor to the wrong place, drank. He swallowed, clearly feeling the burning of shame. I've already been reprimanded and maybe fired. But the main thing is that I almost killed you. Damn, I'm sorry. Alex was silent for a long time, then quietly said, You almost made it impossible for me to walk. But you know, he paused heavily, looking into Matt's eyes. It was my own fault that I didn't pay attention to your problems. You didn't start drinking yesterday, did you? Matt clenched his fists. Maybe, he muttered, but this is not an excuse. Alex sighed and looked at Eve, who stood nearby with her head slightly lowered. There was understanding in his eyes. We all make mistakes, some in relationships, some in work, and these mistakes sometimes cripple not only us, but also those around us. Okay, Alex finally said, I'm not your judge. The main thing is that we are both alive. I hope you will draw conclusions and get your head together. Because this is not a joke, Matt. The colleague nodded, looking away. He apparently felt that there was nothing more for him to do here. Matt coughed and tried to say something else, but instead of words, he only squeezed out, I'll be there if you need it. And he left, slamming the door of the room as softly as he could. Retreating footsteps were heard in the corridor, and Eve looked at Alex. He looked tired, but there was something new in his face, an acknowledgement that in the life of any person there can be a time of falling, and then at least a drop of compassion is important. How are you? Eva asked quietly, approaching the bed. I don't know. Alex tried to sit up a little, and she helped him adjust the pillow. All this is hard for me, and pain, and the realization that my project is now under threat, and the relationship with Matt, and, he paused for a moment, with you. It's all chaos. Eva looked into his eyes, trying to express the very support that she herself once lacked. I'm not going anywhere until you say so directly, she said. I was a fool. I did a lot of wrong things. But if I need to fight for you, for Lily, for our family, I'm ready, if it gives you strength. Alex was silent, and his silence was more eloquent than loud words. He understood that recovery would take not only time, but also will. He would have to accept his wife's help, take the risk of trusting her again. And this meant overcoming the fear of being betrayed again. At night, when hospitals are dormant, when the corridors are lit only by a couple of emergency lamps, Eve still sat at his head, dozing occasionally, but each time she woke up with the thought that Alex might wake up and feel pain. He shuddered several times, moaned in his sleep, and grabbed his bandaged leg. Then she carefully took his hand, and in a strange way, this helped him calm down. When Eva returned to Sophia's apartment, she was sitting at the table, drinking coffee and looking through catalogs of art projects. At the sight of her friend, Sophia raised an eyebrow. Well, how is your wounded hero? Eve swallowed her irritation at the sarcastic tone. She didn't want to quarrel, but she felt that Sophia was now more distant than ever from her worries. Sophia only observed the situation, but did not share the pain and hopes that tormented Eva. Alex is getting better, Eva answered restrainedly. He will have a long recovery, but, thank God, nothing irreversible. Sophia smiled wryly and took a sip of coffee. So, do you think he will forgive you? Do you want to return to the same everyday life pots, caring for a child, everyday conflicts? Eva shook her head, briefly thinking that Sophia could not or did not want to understand that marriage was not just everyday life. But she put that thought aside. She had no time for arguing. I made my choice. I want to save my family. Alex is the father of my daughter, and, she lowered her eyes, I still love him, Sophia. No matter how it sounds, I realized this when I realized that I could lose him completely. Sophia was silent for a moment, as if trying to penetrate Eva's soul with her gaze. Then she muttered with a slight contemptuous laugh. Well, if you want to become the mistress of the house again, that's your right. But don't forget that your family turned their backs on you as soon as you took a step aside. Aren't you deceiving yourself too much? From these words, Eva felt a painful prick in her heart, but she resolutely pursed her lips. She understood that Sophia was talking about envy, or perhaps the belief that freedom was more valuable than relationships. Eve was different. She, perhaps, was mistaken in that she longed for new impressions, but now she bitterly repented. But she couldn't give up on her family. Having collected her things, Eva decided that she could no longer stay in this apartment. "I'll live at my mother's house for a while, and then we'll see. Thanks for the shelter, but I need to move on." She glanced at Sophia, full of silent gratitude for the temporary roof over her head, but also relief that she was leaving. "As you know," Sophia waved it off. "I hope you won't regret it." There was irony in the words, as if Sophia had already had a presentiment that Eva might again face difficulties. However, Eva was firm in her decision. She wanted to return to Lily, to real concerns, albeit complex, but sincere. On the same day, she moved some of her things to her mother. Fortunately, she had invited her to stay for a long time, and Lily also missed her grandmother. There was a moment when Lily, seeing her mother, was tempted to ask, "Mom, are you going away again?" But Eva assured her daughter that they would now see each other every day. The girl beamed as if she had received the best gift. When Eva was next to Alex again in the hospital, she told him about the move. He raised his eyebrows in surprise. "So you are no longer with Sophia?" "No," she confirmed quietly. "I want to be closer to Lily and to you. Even if we can't be together yet, I have to look after you." Alex shook his head thoughtfully, as if wondering how he should feel about such changes. Somewhere inside, he was glad that she left her friend, who clearly did not wish their union anything good. But out loud, he only said, "Understood. Okay, that's even better." These words sounded reassuring. For Eve, this transparently meant that Alex no longer saw her presence as a threat. Of course, there was still a gulf of mistrust between them, but he no longer answered her every question with cold detachment. He began to talk about the details of his injury, what the doctors were saying about possible complications. Eve listened carefully, trying not to show how frightened she was by the prospect that Alex might remain lame. But whatever the future held for them, she was determined to embrace it. The day of possible discharge was approaching, and the doctors wanted to make sure that Alex would be accompanied by loved ones at home. It was necessary to prepare crutches and help him get settled in the apartment so that he could move around. Eva decided that he would live with his mother first, since their own home. He had not yet said whether he would let Eva back, but she did not rush things. One thing was clear: she would do anything to be there and support him. And so the situation developed. Every day she came to the hospital with small gifts, fresh fruit, magazines, and clean t-shirts. And Alex, although not smiling, accepted everything without resistance. Sometimes they could be silent together, and this silence no longer burned them, but built a new, careful space of communication. "Eva," Alex said one evening, when the last rays of the sun were golden outside the windows, "I understand that you want to return to me, to your family. I won't lie, I haven't forgiven and forgotten yet. But he swallowed hard, "I'm also to blame for not noticing how bad you feel around me in recent years." Eve's heart began to beat faster. These words were a confession, a recognition that the marriage was destroyed not only by her betrayal, but by a whole complex of mutual misunderstanding and detachment. "Yes, we are both to blame," she answered quietly, "but I want to change that." Alex nodded silently, and his face reflected desperate determination mixed with pain. Everything is ahead, and no one can guarantee that they will be able to pass through all the tests. But at least they were on the same wavelength, for the first time in a long time. When the day of his discharge arrived, Eva grabbed his arm, helping him stand on crutches. The pain in his leg was still making itself felt, and Alex could not hide his grimace when he took a step. But Eva's presence supported him morally. For some time he will live with his mother, where there is a comfortable environment for a recovering person. But Eva had already agreed to come and help him with the procedures, cook, and bring Lily so she could see her father. When they left the hospital, Alex stopped on the threshold, looking at the autumn rain drizzling in gray streams. Eva stood nearby, opening an umbrella. For a moment he remembered how they had once run in the same rain, the two of them, hiding under one umbrella, laughing like children. Then they were young, happy, and carefree. "Careful, it's slippery," Eva said, catching him by the elbow. Alex shook his head, indicating that he understood the risk. But the risk from now on was not only about not physically slipping. They both face a risk to relearn trust and intimacy, not to step on old mistakes, not to drown in grievances. And yet they stepped forward into the chilly autumn under one umbrella. And this, perhaps, was the first small step towards something important and bright, albeit still barely visible behind the veil of rain. Every day Alex moved a little better on crutches, and the doctors said that there was a good chance of a full recovery. He tried to follow all the instructions and did gymnastics for his thigh muscles. But the main struggle was not so much in the body as in the soul, to cope with the pain of betrayal and with one's own guilt before the family. Eve, seeing his torment, tried to be patient and gentle. Somewhere in the depths of her soul, there remained a fear that Alex would not be able to fully forgive her. But every time she met his gaze not repulsive, but filled with some kind of quiet sadness and warmth, she believed that they had a chance. However, shadows were gathering on the horizon. Sophia was not going to so easily let go of a situation in which she could gain new emotional benefits. This woman knew how to walk on a blade, pushing people together to achieve her own ambitions. She saw that Eva was leaving her influence, which meant she was losing not only her friend, but also a certain tool of her intrigues. A couple of weeks after Alex was discharged, when Eva once again came to see him and was preparing dinner in a small cozy kitchen, she suddenly received a call on her phone. She looked at the screen, the number was unknown. Usually she didn't answer, but something trembled inside, and she picked up the phone. "Hello, Eva," came a familiar male voice with a slight hoarseness. She felt a chill inside her from surprise. It was Ryan. For several seconds, she could not say anything. It seemed that the period of her life when she allowed herself an adventure with the pilot was left in the past, buried in the depths. But now he makes himself known again. "Why are you calling?" Eva asked quietly, going out onto the balcony so that Alex wouldn't hear. "I was here. I wanted to know how you were." "How are you doing?" Ryan spoke slowly, as if he didn't know what to say. "I heard that your husband had an accident. Is everything okay?" Eve swallowed, feeling her heart clench. How does he know? Has Sophia really contacted him? Alex is already doing better. "Look, Ryan, I don't want to discuss our story anymore. It's over. I'm returning to the family." She said this sharply, almost blurted out, hoping that he would take the hint and leave her alone. "I understand," Ryan replied, tension creeping into his voice. "I just wanted. I miss you." The last words sounded with a hint of seductive melancholy, which once made Eva's head spin. She felt an unpleasant chill run down her back. No, she didn't want to repeat her mistakes. Yes, it was once attractive, but then it resulted in a series of troubles and destruction. She said firmly, "Ryan, forget about what happened between us. I have no desire to repeat. I'm not interested in this shoot or anything like that anymore." My heart was pounding, fear mixed with anger. She wanted to end the conversation, but Ryan didn't give up. Okay, don't fume. I see you have decided to return to your boring life. Well, if you change your mind, I'm in touch." "I won't change my mind," she blurted out, turning off the call. There was silence on the balcony. She lowered her hand with the phone, feeling like after talking with Ryan something nasty was scratching in her chest, as if it were the ghost of her own mistake, reminding her that she couldn't let go of the past so easily. When Eva returned to the kitchen, Alex looked at her in surprise. "Everything is fine?" "Yes, just an unimportant call," she answered briefly. "Stupid spam." She was forced to lie because she knew that now was not the time to talk about it. Alex is recovering, and mentioning Ryan could reopen old wounds. However, she did not suspect that Sophia had already begun her quiet game behind the scenes. That same evening, Sophia called Ryan. They had a short conversation, full of omissions. Sophia urged him, "You should meet Eva again. She's only pretending that it's all over. And you know how it happens, you just have to give her a reason." Ryan, unable to fly and depressed, agreed, not fully understanding what Sophia was trying to achieve. He felt bad. He remembered the moments of his past glory and success, but now he wanted at least a small victory. Thus, One day, Eva and Ryan allegedly accidentally crossed paths in one of the cafes, where Eva was negotiating a photo shoot with a potential client. And then Ryan appeared with his charming smile, sitting down at the next table as if by accident. He looked into her eyes so that the blood froze in her veins. "Hello," he said, opening the menu. Eva looked around in confusion and flushed. "What are you doing here? I come here often, didn't you know?" He smiled with feigned innocence. She clenched her teeth and ended the business meeting, trying not to show that she was storming from within. But leaving the cafe, she found herself face to face with Ryan, who caught up with her. "Don't run away, we can talk like adults," he sighed heavily. "I don't want to quarrel, Eva. It's all over between us." "Isn't this enough?" she asked coldly, clutching the strap of her bag. Ryan looked at her almost sadly. "It seemed to me that you and I could at least remain friends. Do you remember our flights, our passion?" "Shut up," Eve hissed, feeling that if he continued, she might snap. "It's in the past. I have a different life now, and I don't want to go back to my old mistakes." "Okay," he sighed. "Understand. Sorry to bother you. It's just, I'm alone now. It's hard for me. I don't have a license anymore. I don't have a job. I wanted to talk to at least someone who understood me. Maybe I'm wrong for pursuing you." His voice trembled, and it was a mixture of sincere sadness and a subtle manipulative technique. Eve hesitated. She was sorry that his life was going downhill, but she could no longer give him comfort because it was destructive for her marriage and for herself. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you," she said firmly. "Find another way to deal with your pain. I'm not the one who will save you." Ryan bit his lip for a moment, and his eyes flashed with some kind of unclean fire. Then he nodded and left. Eve felt her knees shaking. She sat for a few more minutes, unable to move, and only then went to the car. She didn't know that Sophia was sitting nearby, across the road, behind the glass of another cafe, watching the scene with a slight grin on her lips. Sophia was trying to achieve something. Perhaps she wanted to provoke a new outbreak of mistrust on the part of Alex or strike a blow at the fragile peace that Eve was beginning to find. Deep down, Sophia never believed in happy families, believing that all relationships are doomed, and she enjoyed how her subtle manipulations rocked the boat of other people's destinies. Let them try to stay afloat, Sophia thought, raising a cup of espresso to her scarlet lips. Let's see what their pathetic loyalty will last for. Something was wrong with the weather. A strong wind was blowing yellow leaves through the streets, breaking tree branches, and there was a premonition of a thunderstorm in the air. On such days, people preferred to sit at home, cuddling with a blanket and a cup of tea, but Eve did not have time for comfort. She rushed to Alex because Alex's mother called and said that he felt bad today. His temperature had risen, and the doctors advised her to look at the wound to see if inflammation had suddenly started. On the way, she did not notice how someone was constantly following her in a dark sedan. That someone was Sophia, who decided to follow her friend, hoping to capture any compromising scenes with Ryan. But Ryan wasn't there, so Sophia chose a different tactic. When Eva came into the house, she saw that Alex was lying on the sofa. His legs were in bandages, and his face was pale and sweaty. She immediately jumped up. "Alex, is everything okay? Shall I call the doctor?" "They've already called," he muttered, looking at her tiredly. "They say maybe it's just a reaction to the weather and stress. But damn, it hurts." He grimaced as he tried to move his leg. Eva, without hesitation, put a damp towel to his forehead and began to calm him down and offer him hot tea. Alex's mother walked around, also worried, but it was clear from her appearance that she was already feeling better because Eva was here, taking the initiative. "Thank you for coming," Alex whispered when his mother went into the kitchen for a minute. "I'm really worse than usual." "Of course, I will always come when you need it," Eva answered quietly, experiencing a strange, trembling feeling. Once they both dreamed of a life where they would be together and support each other, and now she is doing what she considered her duty. While Eva was carefully examining his bandage and adjusting his pillow, a car flew into the yard. Her headlights flickered across the windows, and the sound of an alarm was heard. Everyone shuddered. Alex's mother looked out the window and noticed that Sophia had arrived. Eve frowned in confusion. Why did Sophia come here? She burst into the house, not embarrassed that she was an unwanted guest here. Alex sat up on the sofa, looking in her direction in amazement, having difficulty understanding what was happening. Sophia, Eve muttered, feeling a chill run down her spine. Sophia gracefully took a step into the room and looked around the situation, as if she were the mistress of the situation. A strange smile played on her face. "Good evening," she said, glancing over at Alex. "Sorry for not inviting you. I just wanted to talk to Eva, and I know she's here." Alex frowned. "Did something happen?" "Yes, something happened." Sophia looked around the room. "I thought Alex wanted to know the truth." "The truth about what she is hiding from you, Alex." Eva, hearing this, boiled. "What nonsense. What other truth?" "About your recent meetings with Ryan," Sophia retorted, raising an eyebrow. "Aren't you going to tell your husband that just yesterday you were with Ryan in a cafe, having a nice conversation on the street?" Alex turned his head sharply towards Eve. His gaze was filled with anxiety and distrust. "Eva, is this true?" Eva blushed with excitement. "Yes, I met him, but it was an accident. We didn't make an appointment. I didn't want to communicate with him. You must understand." Sophia sighed theatrically, as if catching Eve in a lie. "It's amazing how in such a huge city people accidentally cross paths exactly where." She lowered her voice to a whisper. "Maybe you're up to something again?" Alex, despite the pain, stood up, his face paled even more. "Is this really an accident, Eva?" "Yes," she exclaimed, trying to hold his hand. "You know it yourself. I would never do it again." Ryan himself came up and tried to talk about general matters. I rejected him. Sophia shook her head, feigning regret. "Oh, what a pity that I don't have a voice recorder so you can hear how nicely they talked. Of course, I'm not saying that she's betraying you again, Alex." Her voice became honeyed and poisonous at the same time. "But the facts speak for themselves. Eva has been in touch with Ryan more than once in recent weeks, and recently I saw how he followed her with his eyes." Something turned inside Eva. She realized that Sophia was deliberately lying, trying to inflate the situation. "You're lying," Eve exploded. "You arranged this meeting yourself, right? Is this what you're doing?" Sophia just shrugged, maintaining a mysterious half-smile. Alex looked first at Eve, then at Sophia, and fear, familiar pain, and perhaps rage flashed in his eyes, the fear of repeating the betrayal he experienced. Finally, he abruptly pushed Eve's hand away, swaying as he tried to get up from the couch. "Stop, Alex." Eva got scared. "Your leg hurts, don't get up." But he was already on his feet, grabbing a crutch, but his wounded leg did not provide support, and he almost fell, just catching his balance. A grimace of pain and irritation appeared on his face. "I'm tired of all this," he said, trying to speak loudly, although his voice faltered. "Eva, I don't have the strength to constantly be afraid that you will again." He couldn't finish, remembering the past wound too well. If it was an accident, fine. But, damn, it looks like you have some secrets again. Eva bit her lip. There were tears of resentment and despair in her eyes. How could she prove that Sophia was turning everything upside down? "I swear this is all a lie," she squeezed out, looking into Alex's eyes. "Yes, we crossed paths with Ryan, but I wasn't going to continue anything." Sophia crossed her arms over her chest. "Why then hide this fact from him?" Eva wanted to object that she had not had time to tell yet. After all, there was no right moment, and Alex was already worried about the inflammation in his leg. But the words were confused, and Sophia looked at her victoriously, like a devilish keeper of other people's secrets. "That's enough," Alex interrupted the conversation, trying to stay on crutches. "Sophia, get out. This is our home, and you are not welcome here with your revelations." Sophia's face twitched in a grimace of arrogance, and she headed towards the exit, leaving a caustic parting note in the air. "I just wanted you to know, Alex, who you're dealing with. Good luck to you." As soon as the door closed, Alex, wincing in pain, sank back onto the sofa. Eva rushed towards him, but he pulled away. There was a mix of disappointment, fatigue, and resentment in his gaze. "I don't know how to believe you now," he said quietly, pressing his palm to his temple. "Sophia, of course, can lie, but the fact of meeting Ryan. Tell me honestly, why didn't you tell me about this?" Eve took a deep breath and exhaled, trying to calm her nerves. "I wanted to avoid your pain. I knew it was hard for you now, and I didn't want to stir up memories. It was a 5-minute accident, and I didn't see the point in burdening you with it. I will tell you later." Alex fell silent, looking down. Outside the windows, the wind whistled through the trees like an ominous warning. "It's hard for me," he finally said. "Every time it comes to Ryan, I remember everything. Like you." He clenched his fists. "I understand that you could have accidentally encountered him, but now I'm again in doubt whether your eyes are lying, whether you have something that I don't know about." Eva realized with pain in her soul that trust had not yet been restored, and every little thing undermined it. She decided not to cry or make unnecessary excuses. Only frankness would help, even if it was bitter. "You have the right to doubt," she said, squatting down to look him straight in the eyes. "But I will do everything to prove that everything is over between me and Ryan. I can't stop him from appearing somewhere, but I will never betray you again. And if Sophia wants to stop us, she will have to put in a lot of effort. I'm on your side. Please believe me." His gaze softened, and he wrapped his arms around hers. For a moment, Eva felt how he squeezed her palms tightly, as if he was afraid to let go and immediately lose her. "Okay," he whispered, "I'll try to trust you." The thunderstorm outside the window became stronger, and the first drops of rain lashed the glass. They sat like this, hugging each other, amid the thunder and darkness of the night. It seemed that at this very moment they were rebelling against a whole world of intrigue and fears in order to defend their right to a new attempt at being a family. After Sophia's ill-fated visit, events developed rapidly. Eva was ready to do anything to prevent further misunderstandings. She agreed to change her phone number so that Ryan could no longer call her, and cleared social networks of any hints of old contacts. Alex, although he did not say it out loud, was internally glad of such measures. But there was still a shadow of doubt in his gaze. Sophia didn't back down either. She continued to occasionally appear in Eva's life, either sending mocking messages or trying to organize friendly meetings under the guise of caring about her. But Eva felt that she was only adding fuel to the fire. Finally, when Eva received another message from Sophia with an offer to help, she realized that it was time to put an end to it. She called Sophia herself and directly demanded a meeting. Sophia appointed the place. It was an expensive restaurant with dim lights and golden candelabra, where the owner of the gallery herself loved to dine. Eve appeared there in the evening, fearing that everything might go wrong, but knowing that otherwise they would not get rid of the toxic connection. "Oh, hello, darling," said Sophia, noticing Eva at the entrance and waving to her with a hand with a pearl bracelet. She was dressed in an elegant black dress, scarlet lipstick on her lips, and her eyes sparkled with anticipation. Eva sat down opposite and asked the waiter for a glass of still water. Sophia took a sip of red wine with a smile. "Well, why such urgency?" Eve's gaze was cold and decisive. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I came to say that I don't want you to interfere in my life anymore. Everything that once happened between us is over. I don't need your friendship or your support." Sophia raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a declaration of war. Haven't I been your friend for many years? I gave you shelter when Alex kicked you out. Yes, I am grateful that you sheltered me then. But now I see that you were simply using my position to pull strings and destroy my family even more. Oh, how serious we are. You're not an angel yourself, Eva. Don't forget who betrayed Alex first. Or are you now imagining yourself to be a saint? Eva's heart sank from the pang of truth. Yes, she cheated. But this does not mean that she allows herself to be manipulated further. "I know about my mistakes," she said firmly, "but I decided to correct them. You continue to wreak havoc, enjoying the misfortune of others. You know, Sophia, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. For a second, real irritation flashed across Sophia's face, but she immediately pulled herself together, smiling with the shadow of a smile. As you say, dear, already on the street, feeling the wind ruffle her hair, Eva sighed convulsively as if she had left a snake's den. Many emotions were raging inside: resentment, anger, pain, but also some kind of bright liberation. Now she made it clear to Sophia that she no longer wanted to play her games. On the way home, Eva stopped at the pharmacy to get some medicine for Alex, then called him and said she would be there soon. In response, she heard only a short, "Okay, I am waiting." There were still traces of tension from the meeting with Ryan, but she hoped that things would work out over time. When Eva arrived home, Alex, already moving with the help of a cane, opened the door for her himself. Although it was small, it was progress. He was making progress in rehabilitation. She saw that he was leaning on the doorframe, and a tired smile appeared on his face. "Hello," he said. "Hello," she responded quietly, trying to hide in her voice the glee that gripped her at the fact that he got to his feet. "How are you feeling?" "Okay," he sighed. "My leg hurts, but the doctor said it was expected. Where have you been?" "I finished one conversation," Eva answered evasively, walking into the house. She didn't want to immediately say that she saw Sophia. She didn't want to bring back the drama that evening. "Maybe he'll tell you later if necessary." They prepared dinner together well. More precisely, Eva was spinning around in the kitchen, and Alex was sitting on a high-backed chair, responsible for cutting vegetables. The warmth that reigned during that half hour of work together reminded them of those happy times when they were just husband and wife doing simple things together. "You know," Alex said when they sat down at the table, "I talked to Lily. She asks when you will come home for good." Eve felt her heart clench inside. She wanted to return even now, but she understood that everything was still fragile. "If you want me to come back, I'm ready. But only if we are both ready for this," she answered, looking into his eyes. There was sadness in his gaze, but also some determination. He placed his hand on top of hers. "I think we should try. But Eva, I don't want to create illusions. Your misdeed lies between us. Yes, I'm trying to forgive, but for now, sometimes I remember and I feel bad." Eve nodded, feeling the bitter sting of knowing that he was still suffering. "I understand. I am ready to participate in any therapy, consultations, anything to make us feel better. But I don't know." She fell silent. "I don't know either," he picked up, and there was melancholy in his voice. "But for the sake of Lily, for the sake of our feelings, we can try." Tears of relief appeared in Eva's eyes. She pressed herself against his hand, feeling how difficult it was for both him and her. But now there is no longer the alienation that hung over them a month ago. There is a willingness to talk and fight together. Another hour later, they were both sitting on the sofa, covered with a blanket, and looking at family photographs that Eva had taken out. Here Alex is building a sand castle with Lily, and here Eva herself is filming gorgeous views of the ocean. This was a couple of years ago during her vacation. Each photo reminded them of the simple joys they had lost when the cracks in their marriage became a chasm. "I miss those times," Eva said, peering into Alex's smiling face in one of the frames where he throws Lily in his arms. "Me too," he agreed. "But maybe we will still have happy days if we learn to forgive each other and ourselves." They sat there in silence until the blanket began to fall off their shoulders and a thick evening fell outside the windows. At that moment, it seemed to them that, at least for the sake of hope for new happiness, it was worth breaking all the old ties that connected Eve with Sophia and Ryan. And this split that she made today was an important step, cutting off the path back in order to move forward, albeit carefully, with many scars, but towards what is truly dear. A new week has begun. Alex continued his rehabilitation and did exercises. Lily went to school, Eva did household chores, and tried to work with her photography clients, although anxiety made it difficult to concentrate. One day, Alex suggested something that he and Eva had never dared to do. "Let's go to a family psychologist. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Maybe this will help us get through all the grievances faster and learn to communicate differently. Eva was confused for a second, because before they believed that real families did not need therapists. But now I understood their problems were too deep to hope for a miracle. Okay, she nodded. I think so too. They made an appointment with a therapist named Natalia, a woman of about 40 with kind eyes, who met in a quiet office furnished with soft chairs and shelves with psychological literature. Having crossed the threshold for the first time, Eva felt a mixture of shame and timid hope, and Alex awkwardly leaned on his cane, trying to restrain himself from making sarcastic remarks. I'm very glad to see you. Natalia greeted them softly as they sat down in the chairs opposite her. Tell me, what brought you to me? Eva and Alex looked at each other. Eva decided to start. We have a crisis in our marriage. My voice trembled. I cheated on him, and now we are trying to restore our relationship. Alex smiled wryly. Yes, and we have a lot of pain, mistrust. I don't know if it will work. Natalia nodded, showing neither condemnation nor sympathy, only the understanding of a professional. She asked them to briefly describe the history of their relationship, what they loved about each other, what they hated. It wasn't easy for Eve, talking out loud about how she felt lonely and burned out, and then went all out with Ryan. Alex, talking about his experiences, squeezed the armrest of his chair so that his knuckles turned white. Often in marriage, we forget why we were ever together in the first place, said Natalia. Maybe it's worth remembering what connected you. What is your overall goal? They thought. After all, they were connected not only by a common past, but also by Lily, and those moments of happiness when they made plans together, dreamed. I want to continue our life together, Alex admitted, but I'm afraid to face betrayal again. And this feeling sometimes haunts me. Eva looked at him with pain. I understand, and she's ready to do anything to prove that she's changed. Natalia offered them homework. Write down small letters to each other, where they would express feelings that are difficult to express in conversation, and also choose a joint hobby that would unite them in simple joys. Try something that requires interaction, the therapist said. Maybe board games, a small project where both of you will be interested. When the session ended, they went outside, where the sun suddenly peeked out from behind the clouds, and Eva felt light, as if part of a heavy load had been lifted from her shoulders. Alex also looked calmer, although there was a thoughtful expression on his face. Letters? He asked, smiling at the corner of his lips. I never thought that I would write letters to my wife while living in the same house. But it's interesting, Eva answered. Maybe this will help us understand how we feel. The next few days were spent trying to follow Natalia's advice. They started sharing little notes. Sorry I was harsh yesterday. I appreciate you making me lunch. It's so warm. Today I'm feeling anxious. Help me. And, to their surprise, these words written on paper allowed them both to look at the situation differently, as if the usual aggression in personal communication was slipping away. Another step was the decision to work on a joint model of the bridge. Alex, once upon a time, during his student years, loved to collect small architectural models. Now he suggested to Eva, let's make a model of my real project, the very bridge that is being built now. You will design the details and paint, and I'll help with the drawings. Together they went to a hobby store, bought plywood, glue, and miniature parts. Lily, seeing their enthusiasm, also became interested. She helped paint the slat, imagining that these were the supports of the bridge. During this joint fuss, laughter was heard in the living room of the house, and glued pieces covered with paint were piled on the table. Alex gave careful instructions. Eve made fun of his pedantic approach, and Lily clapped her hands when she saw the model come to life. Careful, these are delicate parts, Alex said, looking at Eva, who was trying to secure something with duct tape. Everything is under control, Mr. Builder, she smiled. I'm a photographer. I know better what this support looks like from the right angle. It was as if for a moment they forgot about tragedies, insults, and blackmail. This model became a symbol. The bridge between them was also restored, piece by piece. However, The threat from Ryan has not gone away. Alex and Eva remembered her every day, expecting that thunder could strike at any moment. But Ryan didn't show up. Perhaps he was preparing his strike, or perhaps he was simply trying to put pressure on his nerves with silence. Meanwhile, at the next session with Natalia, they admitted that the situation with possible public disclosure of their betrayal still hangs over them like a sword. The psychologist advised them not to hide it deep down, but to realize, even if they have to go through a scandal, they can survive it if they stick together. Sometimes our fear of shame is greater than the shame itself, said Natalia. It's important not to let him control your actions. These words stuck in our minds. Alex and Eva, sitting in the car on the way home, looked at each other. Can we really survive this? They thought. Perhaps yes, if you have already found enough courage and love not to betray each other again. In the evening, when Lily went to bed, they sat in the living room in front of the unfinished model of the bridge. Alex reached out to Eve, hugged her from behind, burying his nose in her hair. She felt her entire being respond to his warmth. I want to tell you, thank you for not giving up, he whispered. Without you, I wouldn't be ready to go to therapy, build this bridge, laugh. Eve turned around, their gazes crossed. She remembered how, in moments of passion with Ryan, she thought she could no longer feel alive around Alex. Now she realized how much stronger and deeper the feelings that are born from joint trials, forgiveness, and responsibility. And thank you for giving me a chance, she replied. They looked at each other with piercing tenderness, and at that moment a thought flashed through Eva's head, which she was afraid to talk about. Alex, I wanted to tell you. I wasn't sure, but it seems I'm pregnant. The world seemed to stop. Alex released his embrace and moved away, looking into her eyes. What? He asked barely audibly, afraid to believe. I'm not entirely sure, Eve admitted. I have a delay and I feel changes in my body. I'll go to the doctor tomorrow and get tested. It could just be a false alarm, but Alex didn't know what to say. On the one hand, shock, and on the other, perhaps joy. Pregnancy could be a new chapter or an additional challenge. Ava, he touched her hand. If this is so, what will we do? I will make any decision that we consider correct, she answered, internally shuddering with fear. But I don't think I have any doubts. If I'm really pregnant, I want to give birth, Alex. Of course, this will not be easy because we still have so many unresolved problems. He sighed and hugged her again, holding her closer than before. We can handle it. Whatever the result, his voice broke. I don't know what to say. As a result, they sat huddled together and thought about how life brings the most unexpected turns. Tomorrow, Eva will go to the doctor, and then everything will become clear. But now they felt, if this is a new life inside her, it can become that very ray of hope that will strengthen their family bridge, giving them another chance. The morning brought a new portion of excitement. Eva went to the doctor and got tested. While she waited for the results, Alex stayed at home with Lily, who was taken out of school for the holidays. He couldn't find any rest, glancing at his mobile phone as if expecting an emergency call. Finally, Eva called. Alex, everything has been confirmed. I'm in my 5th week. There was trembling in her voice. Alex felt a strange mixture of panic and joy. He got up from the sofa, almost forgetting about the pain in his leg. So you're pregnant, he said, feeling his heart pounding. Yes, she muttered. I'm going home. We need to talk. When Eve returned, Alex was at a loss for words. He saw in her eyes the same fear and delight that they had once experienced at the birth of Lily. But this time everything was complicated by their recent conflicts, Ryan's blackmail. We can handle it, he repeated, as if convincing not only her, but also himself. She nodded, pressing her hands to her stomach, which had not yet shown any outward signs. Lily, seeing her parents' excitement, ran up and hugged Eve. Mom, are you okay? Eva smiled, patting her daughter on the head. Yes, my dear, everything will be fine. However, she was worried in her heart. After all, if Ryan really reveals incriminating evidence, this whole pregnancy will be in the shadow of public shame. How will this affect their future life? What if Alex withdraws into himself again if the emotions and shame are too strong? At night, she hardly slept, listening to the movements of her body. She imagined how a tiny spark of life was growing inside her, how she will hold the newborn in her arms, with Alex and the grown-up Lily nearby. Can they really start a new chapter by forgetting the past? Meanwhile, Alex was tormented by similar questions. At some point, he went out into the corridor, sat on the windowsill, looking at the starry sky. Eva followed him out and hugged his shoulders. "I'm sorry if I make you even more nervous," she said quietly, "but I couldn't remain silent about pregnancy." "No need to apologize," he answered wearily. "I'm glad to be honest. Just scary. We haven't healed our old wounds yet." Eve hid her face in his shoulder, and he felt her hot tears fall onto his shirt. "I promise I will do everything to." At night, Eva slept soundly, for the first time in many months without suffering from nightmares. Alex also lay down next to her, pressing her closer to him, and a quiet joy flickered in their joint breathing. After all, each of them made a choice, in favor of family, fidelity, and a new life. The following weeks were filled with turmoil and quiet happiness. Eva went to the doctor. She was confirmed that the pregnancy was progressing normally, although she needed support given the stress. Alex continued to recover, had almost given up the cane, and only had a slight limp. But the doctors were pleased with his progress. Lily repeated to everyone in joyful anticipation, "I'm going to have a brother or sister." Meanwhile, the construction of the bridge Alex was working on was made changes after the accident. He began leading the team again, this time spending part of his time on site and part of his time at home, checking drawings remotely. Matt Rivera quit drinking, underwent rehabilitation for alcoholism, and nodded with understanding at Alex's words that we all get a second chance. Family therapy continued, and Natalia noted that Eva and Alex had fewer and fewer outbursts of mutual reproaches and more constructive conversations. Their bridge they had been building in the living room was almost complete. The model now sat on a shelf, serving as a symbol of how to fix what was broken. "This does not mean that we are completely cured," Eva once said during a session. "After all, betrayal leaves a wound. But we learn to live with this scar by supporting each other." Alex nodded then, squeezing her hand. "And I'm ready to learn. The main thing is that we are together." The outside world began to perceive them as a family again. Acquaintances cautiously congratulated them on their pregnancy. Neighbors smiled kindly when they saw them walking with Lily. Someone, of course, talked about rumors, but without confirmation, everything was forgotten. Ryan left and was never heard from again. Sophia also disappeared from the horizon, changing her social circle after a huge quarrel with a couple of influential art dealers about which only snippets of gossip reached. Eva received cold messages from her several times, but simply ignored them, realizing that she needed to cut off contact with this friend completely. One sunny day, Alex invited Eva to a picnic. Lily stayed with her grandmother to give her parents the opportunity to spend time together. They arrived at the river where they had once vacationed together many years ago. Alex took out a blanket, sandwiches, and compote, and Eva took a camera to take a few pictures as a souvenir. "Do you remember when you were going to film bridges from the air?" Alex joked, pointing to a fragment of the bridge visible in the distance. Eva smiled, adjusting the lens. "I probably wouldn't mind taking a couple of pictures now, just not with Ryan." She grinned, slightly embarrassed at the mention of the pilot. Alex, although he felt the sting, was able to let it pass without anger. He simply pulled her towards him. "You can film with me, heaven and earth, as you want. We are now free." They took several shots together. Alex hugged Eva. She laughed. The light of the sun played on her hair. At some point, Alex took the camera and, trying to follow the instructions, "just don't drop it," took a photograph of Eva, in whom a barely noticeable rounded belly was already clearly visible. In the photo, she turned out so light and radiant that he froze for a second, looking into the lens. "You're beautiful," he breathed. "I never thought that after everything we would stand like this." Eve looked at him in response with deep tenderness, remembering all their trials, pain, tears, guilt, and now a new life in her. "We survived," she said, "and we will continue to move forward." When the sun began to set, they sat on a blanket, holding hands, and talked about the future. Alex talked about how he dreams that a boy will be born, and Lily will be his mentor, and Eva joked that a girl is also not the worst option. But in the depths of the words there was confidence. They would accept any child with love. Returning home, Eva suddenly felt that in her chest she no longer had that suffocating melancholy that drove her to take risks with Ryan. Instead, there was a calm, mature joy, and the heart was filled with gratitude that they were able to not lose each other completely. "I think I have now fully realized that love is not only passion," she admitted when they stopped on the side of the road so Alex could stretch his leg. "This is work, the ability to forgive and be there when everything is difficult. It's a pity that I had to go through big mistakes to achieve this." Alex nodded, turning away so she wouldn't see the moisture glistening in his eyes. "But the main thing is that we realized it on time." Later, when they had already arrived home, Lily rushed to them with questions. "Well, when will my brother show up there? I'm already bored of being alone." And they, laughing, hugged her, realizing that their family had nevertheless been reborn from the ashes. Yes, not without scars, not without pain, but with new strength and faith. Days turned into weeks, then months. The closer the due date approached, the more Alex surrounded Eva with care. He helped her as best he could, prepared breakfast, and carried heavy bags. Sometimes he woke up at night to check if she was okay and if her back didn't hurt. Lily eagerly asked about choosing a name. When the day came, Eva was taken to the maternity hospital. Alex was next to her, holding her hand, as he had done many years ago at Lily's birth. At that moment, he felt that their bond was stronger than any prejudice, and although fear for her life and health squeezed his heart, he knew that they had gone through such storms that this test, the birth of a new life, would only strengthen them. After several hours of screaming and struggling, a boy was born. Alex held him in his arms, trembling slightly from overwhelming feelings. Lily, standing in the hallway with her grandmother, squealed with delight when she learned that she now had a brother. When Eva was transferred to the ward, she, pale and tired, smiled at her husband. He brought her son to her, and she, hugging the baby to her, exhaled. "Hello, our new world." Tears flowed from both of them, but only one thing sounded in their heads. They did it. Through pain, through betrayal, through fear and blackmail, through doubt and therapy, they came to a point where new life testifies. Sometimes love can survive even under the darkest clouds. There will still be difficulties in their family, and they will have to work on trust and mutual understanding more than once. But the main thing is that each of them finally realized, if you take care of each other, then you take care of your family. And this realization was stronger than all the shadows on the horizon with which their terrible story began. Now, in the rays of the rising sun over the maternity hospital, with a tiny child in their arms, they looked at each other with such depth and faith that any shadows dissipated. There was only the road ahead to further love and mutual support. Soon after the birth of his son, Alex completed the construction of the bridge, investing not only his professional knowledge, but also all the new energy of his renewed heart. The official opening was a grand affair, and Alex, leaning on a lightly decorated cane and still limping occasionally, stood in front of the assembled guests. Eva, holding the baby in her arms and Lily next to her, smiled in the front rows. When the red ribbon was cut, the hall erupted in applause and fireworks burst into the sky. The sound was so deafening that everyone in the crowd skipped a beat. Eva hugged her son to her, feeling a rumble in her chest, and looked at Alex. He answered her with a look that read, "We built not only this bridge, we have built a bridge in our hearts." Thus ended the dark period in their lives. Yes, the past left scars that will remind themselves more than once, but they realize that together they can overcome any challenge, even the most terrible shadows on the horizon. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.